So you're trying to remove your popcorn ceiling, but nothing's working. You tried all of the methods that you've seen online. You tried soaking it, you tried scraping it, you tried sanding it. It's still not coming off. Don't panic. The method that I'm about to show you is guaranteed to work. Now, if you watched my previous video on how to remove popcorn ceilings as a non-professional, and you tried all of the methods, but it's still not working, I have another way to do this. It's a little bit more labor intensive, but I guarantee you, if you do this, you'll end up with a smooth finished ceiling. Now, if you've done some research online and you watched a couple of YouTube videos on how to remove popcorn ceilings, you probably saw that the majority of people will soak the popcorn ceiling and then scrape it off using a spackle knife. Although that is a good method, I wouldn't always suggest doing that. Now, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with spraying too much water on your popcorn ceiling. You can end up over soaking it and all the water sucks into your drywall. Now, when you go to scrape it, you can end up with gouges and tears. Now, I'm going to assume that you tested your ceilings for asbestos before you start this project. If you didn't, please watch the last video. I kind of go into the details over there. So if you have a popcorn ceiling that has previously been painted before, the first thing I would do is I would sand everything using an 80 grit sandpaper. Now, the goal here is not to sand everything super smooth. You want to just knock off the peaks. Trust me, if you try to get it really smooth, it'll take forever. Now here you see me using a small palm sander, which is connected to a vacuum. Now you can use something bigger than this. This is all I had available that day, but I would suggest getting maybe the I Know Craft, which is less than $200 and will save you a bunch of time. So once you sanded down all the highs and the peaks, you want to go ahead and grab a bucket of joint compound. Now we're going to take this joint compound and put it in a separate bucket, and then we're going to add some hot water to it. I know this hot water works the best, but if you don't have hot water, you can use cold water. Now, you don't want to add too much water. We're going for the consistency of pudding. Now, once you're happy with the consistency, you can use a 9-inch roller or 18-inch roller, but you want to use a 1/2-inch nap. Now, the nap refers to the thickness of the roller. Usually for walls, we'll use a 3/8-inch roller, but for something like this, if you want to get into creases and crevices like this popcorn ceiling, we're going to use a 1/2-inch nap. Next, you're going to go ahead and dip your roller into the bucket and load it up with the joint compound. Now, the rest is really simple. We're just going to add the joint compound to the ceiling, just as if we were painting it. Now, don't work in too big of a section. A 4x4 section is good enough. Once you added your joint compound to the ceiling, then we're going to go ahead and take a spackle knife and smoothen everything out. Now, we're not going for perfection here. You're probably going to end up doing this twice, maybe even a third time for a small skim coat. Just put it on there, get it smooth, move on to the next section. Then we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to come back and sand everything again using a 220 grit sander. Now, after sanding everything with the 220 grit sandpaper, and once I have it nice and smooth, or as smooth as possible, I like to go ahead and use a primer, a PVA primer or a high build primer before I continue with the second coat. Now, you're probably wondering, why prime everything if you're going to do a second coat? Well, here's a little trick. Once you spackle everything and then you hit it with the primer, that primer is going to highlight all of the sections that you missed. So every little pinhole, every little spot that you missed is going to be highlighted with that white primer. Now, once that primer dries and you see all of the spots that you missed, you can go ahead and do a second coat. Sometimes you don't even have to do a full second coat. You can just go ahead and skim coat all of the little sections that you missed. Now, once you completed your second round of spackling, you want to go ahead and prime everything again. Now, if you only did a few spots, just prime those areas that you spackled, but you definitely want to seal that joint compound. And again, you can use a regular PVA primer. I like using a high build primer because it's a little thicker in consistency. And what it does, it kind of fills in the little pinholes that I missed and hides the imperfections a little bit better than just a regular PVA primer. Now, once you let your primer dry, you can go ahead and paint the ceiling with a flat ceiling paint. And I like using a 3/8-inch nap roller just to get a nice, even, smooth finish.